There's technology now. That's quick, that's accurate, that we can use to actually solve this problem and know the answer.
Hello and welcome to the AI Master Group podcast, featuring the people who are building the future of AI in their work today. I'm your host, Jim Griffin. Today, I'm very happy to introduce Victor Perrine, who goes by the nickname Viko among his friends. He's currently the Global Director of New Growth Initiatives at Circle K. And prior to that, he was the Director of Branded Innovations and Customer Loyalty at Delek Holdings US. And even before that, the Chief Operating Officer at UGP Philippines. Viko, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jim, for having me over to your podcast here. It's an honor. Appreciate it.
It's an honor for me. My goodness, there's so many people that would love to be the global director of new growth initiatives at any company, let alone at Circle K. My goodness. So I happen to know that you have a very interesting personal story and background, really extending back to before you arrived in the U.S. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course, Jim. Life before the U.S. I was originally born in the Philippines. I went to high school and university there. And then I graduated with an integrated marketing communications degree at the University of Asia in the Pacific. And I followed my passions soon after and ended up taking a audio engineering degree up in Sydney, Australia. So I finished that. That was an intensive course, and was blessed with some high marks and had the opportunity to work in a very prestigious studio there. However, lo and behold, I didn't have the legal status to work, and hence I ended up getting a job in Sydney to stay in Sydney, actually in the irrigation business. So I ended up being the state sales manager for a high-end irrigation company. And then soon after that, my next, let's say, vocation was in fresh produce. And I think that's when I started chipping closer to data, chipping closer to retail. And at some point there, 10 years in Australia, where I met my wife, we ended up actually moving to the US actually for 2 years. I became the loyalty manager for another convenience store company called Mapco. And it was 2.5 years to 3 years in Nashville, and then went to the Philippines. So that was 14 years away from home, finally working back in the Philippines as a chief operating officer for a very large banana plantation, of which I was able to implement some cutting edge agricultural technology, which used computer vision to detect plant types and to actually count the number of banana trees we had, over 6,000 acres of bananas. And we would fly a Cessna over this plantation with using lidar and sophisticated cameras to actually count how many trees we had in that plantation to manage our actual production and forecast our production. So just a little bit of some background. It's a lot. It's a lot of trees, right? So you're looking at about an acre should be about close to about 500 trees. But then that's not always the truth, right? You actually may have 485 or 450, right? And so productivity is important there. And you may, everyone says, oh, we have 500 trees per acre, but you actually don't. So this is using computer vision technology, we were able to get a little bit more accurate with our forecasting. And when you talk about 6,000 acres, a difference of 10% makes a big deal. So that actually helped us in terms of our forecasting. So yeah, then my wife being from the U.S., we decided to move back to the States, and found myself working with Delek again, and ended up becoming the director of innovation over there. Also managed the loyalty program, and then now working with Circle K, came in as the global director of digital innovation, and now the global director for new growth initiatives.
What an amazing journey. I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit about what that role is like in innovation. Not all pilot projects finally get funded. So I imagine that you've seen some that got the green light and some that didn't as well.
Yeah, so I could speak to let's say my first 2 years in Circle K, or even when I was the global director in of innovation in Delek, right? A lot of day to day would be two things in general. One would be looking what's out there, proactively looking. So we do have tools and some consultants who provide potential technology that could be implemented in the company. And we also can also be proactive ourselves and look out what's out there through our networks. Um, but also, having the title, people come to you as well. Companies and startups do come over to you. So that's one side, is looking what's out there, whether proactively or them coming to you, or them coming to you. Uh, a lot of technology mostly applied to customer experiences or operational efficiencies, right? Or even improving administrative tasks. And then the other side would be pushing along other innovations that are already in flight. So either in beta, alpha, or pilot mode, or even just nipping at the edge of scaling. So you have one foot on what's coming into the funnel, and another foot of actually pushing things through the funnel. So that's pretty much at a high level the day to day, right? A lot of stakeholder communication, a lot of stakeholder management, a lot of analysis. Hmm.
Wow. Interesting. I wonder if you have like a framework or guidelines that help you to pick projects that are most likely to get ultimate executive support at the end of the day.
Mm. Good question there, Jim. You know, being part of the company, it's always good to understand what the company's vision is, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 years down the road. So I would sum it up as understanding the company's big bets in terms of its growth. I would, 5, 10 year outlook, and then maybe double clicking on that and seeing, okay, and again, this is in the context of retail. Are we looking at improving the customer experience? And knowing that we have existing customers now, and we have customers of the future who expect certain technologies to be part of their shopping experience. And then you also have, so there'll be some potential, a lot of technology that touches that space. And then you'll have technologies that would touch operations, that will touch more of improving the workforce or improving the workplace, general administrative tasks that could be done faster or better or more efficient, right? So, you're looking at either those two. And then there's also the other view of what are other possible verticals that the company can get into outside of retail. Maybe adjacent verticals, right? Adjacencies. Um, being in retail, you naturally have certain, I would just say, business muscle, such as supply chain management, strong marketing, merchandising, and some of those three things. Some of those strengths can be applied to different verticals. So again, also looking at what else is out there that necessarily have to be in retail, but also maybe something that the business might also want to get into as another profit engine or a profit generator. So I would say those three main things: customer facing technology, operational efficiencies, and other possible business adjacencies.
Yeah. So we've been talking about the top end of the funnel and moving things through the funnel, and then some things finally exit out the bottom. I was actually at Circle K yesterday, and I saw pretty interesting technology at the point of purchase that seems to have been built with AI, from what I could tell. It seems to go beyond basic in-store advertising. It was a screen that was facing me as I was checking out. I got a sense that there was a screen facing the cashier as well. Do you know what I'm describing? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, this is a very unique program, very unique to Circle K. It's called the Lift program. So what you saw, Jim, was a customer engagement platform as a point of sale meant to suggest an upsell based on whatever items you'd scanned. Now, it may seem that there is some AI behind it, but it's actually still for now business rules being applied to what is being in front of you. So if you happen to scan a Red Bull or an energy drink, it would then say, okay, if this particular energy drink is scanned, then suggest a second one for half off. So these are business rules built in the back end, but that's what it does, and it's at the moment. It's actually the moment of truth, right? When the customer is in front of the cashier, willing to already pay, wallet is out, credit card is out, and and the system is recommending a second item of similar or the affinity or the same item, and the value of having that extra item is not too much of a stretch, and you can, as a customer, can simply touch the screen that's facing the way you just described to add the item into the basket, or the screen that you mentioned that was facing the cashier. There's actually a script that that pretty much the cashier can also pretty much reinforce the upsell, and we can also add the item from that end as well.
It seems like a strong analogy to the checkout experience on e-commerce, where you're right at the point of purchase and it makes the final recommendations just before you check out.
Yeah, the principles are the same. The context is different. I would just say that the difference of an e-commerce experience, you could take your time.
You're listening to the AI Master Group podcast.
Yeah, the principles are the same. The context is different. I would just say that the difference of an e-commerce experience, you could take your time, right? You could be sitting in the couch. You could be sitting in your couch, or you could be, lounging around, and you can really take your time and look through the recommendations, scroll through, carousel through who else bought what and everything else, right? What makes this thing unique is that it's normally, right, the cashier just wants, the shopper does just want to get in and out very quickly. So there's that time element between both sides. So it creates a different way of developing the product from a user experience point of view. And it also delves into the importance of what the offer is as well. It's hyper targeted offer that really resonates with the customer. So that's all our opportunities. Laser focus on the customer, especially for and so these are, this opens a lot of opportunities. We're continuing to build the product, especially when it comes to the big questions as the known customer or the unknown customer, right? And so, all in the pipeline.
So, of course, I live in Arizona, but I think you recently rolled this out in Europe. Is that correct?
That is right. Over 1,000 sites in Europe with this technology. That was about 2 years in making. We had Started off with Ireland first, and then we ended up installing. That was the first year, and then the succeeding year, it was our Scandinavian business units and our Baltic business units in Poland.
Ah, excellent. Did you run across any localization surprises when you were doing the rollout?
I would say volumes of localization issues or challenges, so to speak. Uh, let's say, for example, here in the U.S., as I said, you said, "Oh, would you like an extra energy drink?" You say, "Push to add one," or another button would be "next time." And naturally, over here, U.S. customers say, "Oh, next time" means no, right? Um, uh, in Scandinavia, particularly, probably think it was Denmark. Next time was like, well, I don't ever want to have one. What do you mean next time, right? So we've had to change the word next time to no, which is of course, right? Just very simple. But these are that's just some of the language, the localization. However, there was also some very, I would say, compliance localization. Like, it's very interesting. Some countries, we part of the screen actually reflects the actual receipt as well. So there's a small on the right hand side, on the left hand side of the screen, if you're facing it, actually has a digital receipt and shows the items that was scanned, and also shows the item that you would have added as well. And so, yeah, so rounding had, different countries had different rounding rules. Uh, Different countries had different rounding rules based if you were paying in cash or paying in credit. So we had all of those localization across different various forms. But we got there. We got there.
You got there. In one sense, you got there. In another sense, I know it's fair to say that these projects are never quote unquote done, right? So there's always the next thing that you plan to do. And I imagine, are there any new kinds of, say, for example, data sources or new kinds of refinements that you have in mind for this?
Oh yeah, there's just we have a roadmap that's actually going to be planned about 3 years out. Yes, so obviously there's how do we get to the point where we can get laser focused offers on the screens? How do we, how do we involve dynamic content when it comes to language? Right now, all text and all copy is typed in. Will we be able to use large language models tied in and be very and work on the localization, as you said, right? And pretty much use large language models to do the upselling as well, right from the screen. So a lot of opportunity to have AI driven recommendation engine, a lot of opportunity to use large language models to do dynamic content for the texts and even the images that show up on the screen, right? So this is all opportunities for artificial intelligence or Gen AI specifically to implement in this product. I would even say, even even from the analytical side, use artificial intelligence to figure out, what is the best offer to whom and when and where, as well, right? And have those promotions already built in, right? So a lot of opportunity with artificial intelligence in this particular program for sure.
Wow. So just stepping back from, we're talking now about this one particular project that you've implemented. We've seen now in this podcast, like this whole story. And it's very interesting how you started in audio and then was irrigation and agri. And to me, what I'm guessing was the kind of pivot moment of truth. I'm thinking, I'm reading this in, you've never told me this, but was when you started saying, we're here in a plantation and we've got bananas, but we're going to start using high technology to start counting the trees. And that sends you on a completely different trajectory in your whole career, that decision. And then you come to the US and people are looking at you as somebody that did that. And then each split along the way is another split that takes you either in one direction or another direction, what you decide to do, what you decide to focus on. That's one of the things I find most fascinating about you. Of course, you're just a very good communicator, and you do have a great vision, and you really know how to handle multiple stakeholders. But for those who are maybe earlier on in their career or trying to point in the same direction as you, do you have any final words of advice for them, how to take their decisions thoughtfully, leading them in the right direction?
Gosh. But one thing I would say is continue to learn and understand what's going on out there. Frameworks. But that's one, is just don't stop learning, keep on learning. And then and find ways where, you find pain points within whether if you're working for a company, your own company, find pain points that no one else has ever found a solution for. There's always going to be a problem. Always. And sometimes it's all about what we prioritize, which problem we prioritize. Sometimes we call them opportunities, right? It's always opportunity. There's always a problem. Whether it's a small or big problem, figure out the ones that just have never been solved. And many companies will always have these problems. So we'll just pretty much say, oh, that's always been like that. It's always been like that. Well, that's what we are used to doing. When we were counting, when we were saying, how many actual trees do we have per acre in our 6,000 acre farm? Oh, it's always between 500 to, 480. And we'll just use that math to promise what we're going to sell to Japan and what we're going to sell to China. I said, well, it's always been that way. I said, no, there's opportunity. There's technology now. That's quick. That's accurate, that we can use to actually solve this problem and know the answer. And actually, by doing that, create value to our customers that no one else has done if we're the first one. And also, the second thing I'd probably also say is, don't be afraid to be the first mover. This is something that is an art and a science at the same time. I'd say the science would be, okay, which one should we first move on, right? There's a lot of shiny objects out there. So the science would be which particular AI path should we first touch? Which particular AI technology should we first touch and put more investment in, right? And either financial investment, man-hour investment. So that's a science. So you're going to have to do some basic business case studies. But the art would be convincing the key stakeholders who are involved to make it a success, right? And that takes a little bit of understanding of who's for you, who's not for you, who are the right persons or people in the departments that are not afraid to take risks or get excited when you share the story. Just even sharing the story of what possible things could happen. And if you see the folks who's like, I don't know what this means, but I'm really excited about it. It sounds really cool. That's the person that you take in with you in your stakeholder management or your journey, right? And so that's the art to it. So I would say those things, right? It's never stop learning. Figure out what problem to solve, no matter how big or small, because the fact is the problems have never been solved. And number 3 is don't be afraid to be the first mover.
Boy, that is solid gold right there. So, Viko, I'm so grateful to have this chance to talk to you, and I know that our listeners have really benefited a lot from this. If people want to get in touch with you, maybe want to learn more about your work, how can they do that?
I'm on LinkedIn. You can look up my name. Victor Perrine. Viko Perrine at gmail.com, VIKOPERRINE at gmail.com. You can reach me there, yeah.
Okay. Well, once again, thank you very much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the AI Master Group podcast. I'm your host, Jim Griffin. Until next time, stay curious and stay in front.